by Cloudcore, taken by the sky. Welcome back to Build Theory. I'm Aurian Archive. Let's get started. Once again, the focus of tonight's late night stream is on the Steam Deck. And once again, I find myself responding almost immediately to a story that I was fed by the Google propaganda machine. And well, the essence of the story is somebody thinks they have 3D printed the Steam Deck and that they have ergonomics concerns. Now, to be fair, and to be very fair, I do have a Steam controller, and I have talked about it on livestream before that the physical size of it is just a little too big. The Y, B, A, and X buttons and the analog stick are just little too far inwards. I feel like I'm having to hit them with the tips of my thumb rather than the center of my thumb. And that's compared to most other controllers like the Wii U Pro controller, which my center of my thumb from the side can easily rest over the inner Y or the inner D-pad without a problem. The PlayStation 4 controller, my inner thumbs can easily set on top of the D-pad and the square button and the analog sticks without a problem. Looking around, there's the Xbox controller. The Xbox controller, the center of my thumb can casually rest on the X button and the top stick. Middle thumb can get to the D-pad, and I can use the tip to get to the buttons, the option buttons in the middle. And even a DJI drone controller has kind of a middle of thumb. If your fingers are where they need to be, middle of thumbs are right on top of the sticks. And that was one of the biggest problems that I had with the Steam controller is it was just a little too big, and you couldn't ever get the controller to shrunk just a bit to bring those inner buttons outline. Now, looking at the renders and looking at the pictures on the Steam Deck that are available on the website, and we'll go ahead and just bring it up here, and we can probably approximate and figure out what the chassis is going to feel like to hold. I don't doubt that somebody could have already 3D printed and their version of what they think of all the curves and all of the final dimensions that the Steam Deck will ultimately have. Now, given the Steam controller, given that as far as I know there was never any modifications nor any additional packages made available in which users could construct their own Steam Deck that was just a little bit smaller. Keeping that in mind, okay, taking shots at Valve for maybe the Steam Deck might not be as ergonomic as users might want it to be. But I think that's also the reason why Valve is getting the Steam Deck out now and announcing it in the middle of July and showing it off now and getting Steam Deck prototypes into the hands of developers. And that's what I am hearing. Prototype units are being handed out to various developers who work with Valve in order to get their feedback on it. I don't think that what we're looking at on the Steam Deck website is the final version of the chassis. I think we probably could see, especially after the Steam controller and after a lot of the complaints that were leveled against its lack of ergonomic control, I do think that there may be some modifications made to the Steam Deck before the final version launches. Now, that's just an opinion. That's just, I think enough people who now can get hands on it or can get access to get hands on it, who now know about it, who, if a prototype shows up in a game developer's office, everyone kind of go, oh, that's a Steam Deck. Let's give it a shot. How does this work? Does it work with our software? And again, from the outside, and probably a key point here, if we go over to the overview, and as we scroll down the overview, we see that Valve is putting the handheld into people's hands. We see somebody who is, and as far as I can tell, the button presses do appear to be lining up to the action that's occurring on the screen. And scrolling down, and we've got some others like that. Maybe not on this page. Okay, here's another one where, and we look closely at where the trackpad is pointing, and the actions on the screen do appear to be lining up with what's happening on the screen. So probably not an image superimposed over, like somebody's just blindly tapping the controller and then the image is just added in afterwards. I don't think that's what we're looking at. And the other thing I think that's really critical here is the way the camera's moving down. I think we're getting a show off of the wide angle of view that the Steam Deck does offer, at least compared to the Switch. Because if you've held a Switch, you know that the angle, when the camera's coming in over the shoulder, that's actually an awfully odd angle to try and see what someone is doing on a Switch. It just is. So I think this is both Valve showing off, but I think it's also trying to get the deck itself. And another thing that's probably important here is this player here. What is this? Disco Elysium, and this player up here. What was that? Jedi? Yeah. Fallen Order, I think. What was that? Yeah, that was Fallen Order. And somewhere around here, we got somebody, I think, playing Doom Eternal. Okay, here we go. Somebody who's playing Doom Eternal. Now, if you noticed on the first, and this is kind of important, if you notice on the first, and again, take real good look, we've got a looping catch in the video, but the finger movements are matching up to the action on screen. Again, we've got a really odd over-the-shoulder angle showing us the display. But what's really, I think, critical here is Valve is also giving us an idea of what it's like for multiple people to hold this. If you didn't notice on the first two pages, or the first two images, that looks like a female playing Jedi Fallen Order. So we've got long, slender fingers. We scroll down, and person playing Disco Elysium, again a female, but this time the fingers are shorter, stubbier. We're probably looking at either a younger kid or somebody's daughter who's been handed the console. We go over to hardware, and we've got, I'm almost 99% certain that's one of Valve's network engineers. If that's who I think it is, they have big hands. They could pick up the Duke controller without a problem. But this time, let's just go on what we can see. We can see that this one is a guy. He's got really long fingers. From the side, his inner thumb is easily over the thumbsticks with room to spare. He is using the trackpad, and his fingers are curved. So we've got at least three different, and let's scroll down. Do we have any other shots? Okay, we got somebody who's using it on a dock. Now, again, I'm not very sure about this 90-degree USB plug. I think that's going to be a little fiddly. I think either a back plug pop out for a solid stick might have been more desirable. I can think of a couple ways that could have been done. Or the way they've got this set up, yeah, it works, but I think it's gonna be a little funky. Okay, did we actually have any other good shots of somebody? Okay, here's someone else in a car. What's going on in the front? Oh, steering wheel. Alright, again, we've got a relatively young, I think, younger male, and again, we can look at the finger positions. Again, somebody's using the trackpad, and I'm not really sure how many people are going to use the trackpads in real play. I think most people are going to go for the analog sticks, but we do get a sense of scale. Most people have a car. Most people know how big the back seat is. We do have an idea of how much space is being needed to play. So far we've got four different people, four relatively different body types, who are all controlling the Steam controller. And that number of people who actually have hands-on is going to increase. Did I say Steam controller? Who are using the Steam Deck. That number is going to increase. So ergonomics, yeah, fair shot. After the Steam controller, that's something to really kind of look at Valve and go, have you really tested this with a wide range of people? Have they used it for a long time? Have they had complaints about it? I think the big thing here is that moving moving the buttons upwards and going to square trackpads instead of circular trackpads. Yeah, the circular trackpads were kind of nice for trying to like replicate the analog stick muscle memory of movement, but they really do take up a large amount of space and they are difficult to work around. Okay, so that's looking at the Steam Deck as a hardware device and the concerns about ergonomics. I don't think the design is final. I think Valve has made at least a visible effort of getting the console into multiple people, into the hands of multiple people with different body types who have different finger sizes. So maybe some work has already been done. Maybe Valve needs to get a broader sample size of people getting their hands on the deck, but that I think will occur as pre-production units and prototypes are shipped out to developers for testing and to get software lined up for the release. Okay, let's focus on the software for a second. We do know that Valve is shipping with KDE the Steam Deck is shipping with KDE Plasma. Now, what we don't know, I mean, we really don't know right now, is whether or not Valve is employing any KDE developers. Now, if we go check out neon.kde.org. Neon is the distribution that I'm actually using here on this computer to film this stream. And okay, I'm not. There's somewhere in here got to be a setting to make my launcher a little less transparent, because on some backgrounds that is kind of hard to see. I haven't found it yet, but I really haven't looked yet. Okay, getting away from the point. The reason I'm bringing up KDE Neon is that you can buy a KDE Slimbook from slimbook.es, and I'll go ahead and spare you the rigmarole. The Slimbooks start at about €1,000. That's kind of expensive for a Ryzen 4000 processor. It kind of is. And on okay, the reason why you would buy a Slimbook is not necessarily for the hardware. You'd buy a Slimbook because it has an unlocked bootloader, it ships with KDE installed, and you directly support the development of KDE. Money directly goes to KDE.ev and the KDE, what is it? KDE Foundation? Um, yeah, KDE Free QT Foundation and KDE EV goes to the organizations that legally arrange the KDE, all the legal, basically the legal backends who host the software. It kind of goes to that. It supports the project. And what we don't know yet is whether or not purchasing a Steam Deck results in money being provided to the KDE developers. That would kind of be a nice thing if we did get confirmation on that. Don't know enough yet. I don't think Valve has said anything about whether or not they are supporting the KDE project with money from the Steam Deck, but it is something to keep in mind. Something else to keep in mind is that KDE Neon, if you are thinking about trying it, please do be aware it is based on Ubuntu. This rock solid base here claim is it's a lie. It just is. KDE Neon is not built on a rock solid base. It's built on a shifting rubble of a crumbling fortress that's a few centuries old and is about to slide down a hillside. Now, that being said, I realize I'm getting away from the point here, but this does kind of matter. And this comes back to one of the things that I've talked about in previous live streams. Knowing your source, knowing where things come from. Arch Linux is designed as a lightweight, flexible Linux distribution. And if you look through here, I've said this before, I have used the Arch wiki a lot because so many of the things that are in the Arch wiki really do apply across other Linux distributions. And Valve is using Arch Linux, or Arch Linux, I'm not really sure on the pronunciation, to back the Steam Deck. They're not using a Debian-style configuration. Now, what I really don't know here is if a Valve Steam Deck can, say, like the Google Chromebooks, run a Debian installation and Debian repositories alongside the Arch Linux or not. Uh, Depending on the package repositories, for most people, that's probably not really going to be a big deal. Most of the programs that you probably would want to get that are native to Linux are going to be available on Arch. And you may just have to get used to a slightly different package manager. Whoop-de-doo, big deal. Alright, the reason why I went down that path, and so far we've talked over the ergonomics, I think that any concerns over the ergonomics right now are maybe a little premature. Uh, we may see, speaking of Fallen Order, Rayeda is playing that. I'll leave him alone. Okay, so we've gone over ergonomics. It's probably, I think there has been some work done. I think Valve has made a concentrated effort to get more feedback on how the console actually feels in the hands of people who are playing it in real world situations. Uh, we've been over the, are they supporting KDE? Are they not supporting KDE? I think it would be a nice gesture if there is something about a portion of this purchase price does go to KDE.E.V or KDE Free QT Foundation, which I think E.V would be the entity to send donations to. But okay, and we've kind of gone into software that is not installed by default. Now, if you were watching earlier, I started a live stream on installing City of Heroes through the Homecoming servers. And I kind of want a separate video focusing just on the Homecoming software. So I'm actually going to end this stream, since we've now gone over the ergonomics, the KDE connection, support, and next up, we'll try against City of Heroes. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. What I'm running on is not actually the same hardware that will be in the Steam Deck. I am using an AMD processor, the Ryzen 1800, I think, K-Info. Let's just look and see what I'm actually using in here. Okay, we're using a 1700. So, Ryzen 1700 and a GeForce 1660 Ti. I'm not using the same hardware that's going to be in the Steam Deck, but I do think I am using a hardware package that is close enough that'll give us an idea of what it will be like to install a third-party package, software package that is not available under Linux, not available under a Linux repository, and requires the use of a compatibility tool to run. What will that be like when installing on the Steam Deck? That's up next. This is Aurian Archive, and I'll be back after I take something for this cough. Woof.